And we have been so steeped in sin that we are not able to comprehend before sin. It doesn't seem to exist any longer before sin, but it did exist, and there are worlds and there are universes that God has created that there is no sin. And as you study Scripture, you need to understand this very clearly. Before sin, God set up a system of worship so that His presence may be constantly experienced. You know, I got these from my daughter, and she called me up. She was excited. Daddy, look what I found. This is just awesome. And I said, well, read it to me. And she started reading. And I said, well, back up. Let me write these down because they are awesome. You need to understand that God set up a system of worship before you and I were thought of, so that His presence can be constantly experienced. The other worlds experience God's presence on a daily basis. Now, you and I can experience God's presence, and I'm going to tell you how about that today. But you need to understand how God works. After sin, there was a problem. After sin, you need to understand that God still looks and takes notice of yours and my problems. Now, what He was doing to me, He was evaluating me, because the devil says he's serving you because of all the good things that you've given Him. And so the Lord said, go down and slap him a little bit and look at him. So I got slapped. And let me tell you, it was a hard slap. But nevertheless, I know that my Redeemer lives. No one can ever take that away from me. God has done too many things for me. God takes notice of the problems of His people. If you look down in Egypt, when the children of Israel were groaning under the burdens of sin and under the bondage of labor, God heard their cry. And He is a God of answering cries, petitions, and prayers. The problem with humanity today is that we have not cried to God. We have not called to God. And then the other problem is that when God answers, we don't listen. Y'all bear with me. I've got to get this in because the devil is trying to stop me from doing it, but I've got to tell you the whole story. And I remember I was preparing one Friday evening a sermon, and got up very early in the morning, around 2 or 3. It was quiet. My daughters were sleeping. My wife was asleep. And I sit down and I say a prayer, and it's silence. And all of a sudden I hear a little drip, drip, drip from the faucet. And the Spirit of God said to me, ignore it. And I've already learned one thing, that when I don't listen to the Spirit of God, I'm in trouble. You need to understand that. There is a little voice that will say to you, do something, you ought to do it. The devil does not try to warn you or keep you from danger. You need to understand how things work. He is the deceiver of the brethren, and he is the accuser of the brethren, and he accuses them day and night before God. So when God speaks to you, my friends, listen. Don't be like me. So I sat there for a few moments, and the drip gets faster. And I said, well, I will just go and just tighten it just a little bit. And God said, leave it alone. It's the Sabbath. And I popped up out of my chair, and I went into the kitchen, and I tightened the faucet, and it didn't stop dripping. It got faster. So I said, okay, I'll tighten the screw on the top. So I tightened the screw on the top. And I turned it once, and a voice said, stop. I'll just give it a couple more turns. And the voice said, stop. And mind you, this is the hot water. And the voice said, stop. Understand how God approaches us. He will not force His way upon you. But the Lord roughly said, one more turn. And there was no voice. But there was total darkness. Because when I made that one more turn, that faucet blew off, and a column this wide of hot water came up out of there. It hit the light, the ceiling, and I was in the dark immediately. And I threw my hand over it and blew a hole in my hand and blew my hand off. And the kitchen's filling up quickly with hot water. And I looked underneath trying to find the cutoff valve, and they had cut corners in building this house, and there were no cutoff valves. And the water just going woo, woo. And I'm in a dilemma. And I don't hear nothing. You know, we find ourselves in the middle of perplexing situations, and we don't hear anything. Where is God? And we're asking the question, where is God? What do you mean, where's God? Well, God had already told me what he wanted me to do, and I wasn't listening. Focus on what's going on in your life, and when you get in the middle of something and you want to know where God is, well, God was there along with you until you pushed him off in the bushes. You know, I'm ready to listen to anything now. And I get this Vitamix, it's metal, and I throw it over the column of water because it's about the size of the Vitamix, it's about this big around, and I throw it over there, and it's hot, and I said, whoa, that's hot, and then boom, it hits the ceiling. And so finally I devised a plan. I run out to the laundry room and grab all these towels, and I come back and throw the Vitamix on and throw the towels over it, and I could only keep one finger on it because the heat was coming up to the towels and it was still burning me. And I'm in real big trouble. And then here comes my daughter. Gabrielle was only about 6 years old at that point in time. And now the Lord is starting to talk to me. And I said, go out to the curb and turn. He says, go out the curb and turn it off. So I go out the curb, and you cannot turn off your water at the curb. The wrench just doesn't get down in there. You have to have a special wrench to get down in there to turn off your water at the curb. And I couldn't do anything. So I run back to the house, and the voice now was talking to me, call the fire department. I'll call anybody, Lord. I called the fire department, and they come up and they turn off the water. And I've got this mess I've got to clean up, and I'm trying to keep everything quiet because I don't want to wake up my wife for her to see what I've done. So when the fire department gets it all turned off, my daughter says to me, you know, Daddy, I thought about getting up there and sitting on that. I could have really sat on that and held that on there. But I had told her, Gabrielle, don't you move from there. You put one finger on there, and you don't move, you hold the one finger. And I'm glad she was obedient, because it already put a hole in my hand. It will put a hole in her as well. You need to understand that when you don't listen to God, you are in trouble. Now, God has not left you. You have left God. God takes notice of your problems. He looked at my predicament, and he understood when I was ready to listen, and then he guided me. Now, I was ready. So understand that God has not cast off this earth. God is simply waiting for you to listen and understand that he takes notice of what you are in right now. And then he will act in a powerful way to lead you. Notice what I said. Lead you away from your problem or your bondage if you are willing to follow. This world is not willing to follow. Therein lies the problem. You need to watch this. Number 3, you need to write this down. You need to understand these. Then God makes a covenant. He makes a deal with you and me. It is a formal contract, and God always keeps his word. The problem is you and I never keep our word. We fail God on a continuous basis, but God is merciful. He's gracious, and he's long-suffering. He is abundant in goodness and truth, and he keeps mercy for thousands. And I'm glad he's keeping mercy for Lloyd Ruff. And then after he has made the covenant with you, then he gives you laws and instructions. Notice what I said. He gives you laws and instructions on how to live as he guides you. This is the essence of the gospel. And when my daughter told me these things, I said, I got to preach it.